Hi, just trying to catch my breath after what has been a pretty long day out here on the road. But anyway, here from Pennington, New Jersey tonight. Hello, everybody. Yes, it is your DJ Crazy Tom, YouTubing it again and giving you another video edition of Crazy Tom's What Drives Me Crazy, this time for this Thursday night, August the 11th. Yes, finally, NFL preseason football is underway. 4 days too late, obviously. But I'm not going to be talking about that today. I'm going to share with you something I saw this morning that really bothered me, and I actually thought about making a show about it on my regular Libsyn page, but I decided, you know what, I'd rather do it just on video and share it that way. So here is the story. Now, consider I graduated from 1990 from Hamilton High School West. Obviously, so much has changed in the education system since then, now 26 years since my graduation. Now, you have to understand, obviously we've gone from 7 periods to 9. There's been more and more pressure put on students, and now you have Common Core, but then you also have the emotions that go out of control once in a while when it comes to students. Yes, I saw my share of fights in high school, but there was a story I read recently about an incident that happened at a high school in North Carolina in March, where two 17-year-olds were fighting, not sure who instigated what, but it ended up being a bit of a squabble, but then the fight was broken up and one of the combatants left. The supposed instigator of the fight tried to walk off, but was pinned down by what was called a resource officer, and he was told to put his hands behind his back as if he were under arrest. Well, he resisted slightly, and unbeknownst to him, the resource officer tased him. Yes, he tased him with like a thing of like 4,000 or 5,000 volts. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but the fact that he was tased on school grounds as a student was absolutely mind-boggling. And I'm saying to myself, I have a son that's going to be starting 5th grade next month. And according to statistics from the Huffington Post and the Hechinger report, which kind of co-opt, I believe, this report regarding schools and tasers, get this, at least 84 incidents dating back to nearly 5 years ago, September 2011. How can that be possible? And how in the name of God do tasers get permitted to be on school grounds? I do not understand this at all. I mean, people are supposed to get a quality education. It's supposed to be a great background for students. And unfortunately now, whenever there's a disagreement, I mean, say you're in a fight, say you refuse a teacher's orders, say you run from the principal's office, now you could be at risk for getting tased. Is this allowable in our society today here in America? You gotta be kidding me. Now, thankfully, my son goes to a school district that is very solid and fundamental in their principles in education, and it's a very supportive district. I've got to tell you, some of these districts I've heard that allow such a thing, I mean, they need to really get their heads examined. It's bad enough that a couple of years ago, Common Core started, and now everyone has to basically teach from the Common Core curriculum, and guess what? There's always going to be a family of worms that are going to support it, and a family of worms that's going to reject it. But it's still too early to tell if it's going to be successful. My opinion, it will not be, and by far it won't, but I'll explain that another time. Here in this particular situation, you're dealing with kids who are trying to get a better education, get themselves set up for college, whether it be at Ohio State or North Carolina or Kentucky or Stanford. And now there are tasers being used in public schools. There is something obviously wrong. Is this basically what we have to deal with now? Do we really live in such a police state that this is acceptable? I mean, that should be a real scary thought. There could be some parents thinking, you know what, if tasers are legal in public schools and kids get hit by them, well, guess what? I'm taking my kid out of the schools and I'm going to homeschool them, which might even be the safer bet. Never rule that possibility out if you are unsure about your kid being in school and you're afraid of possible taser activity taking place. First of all, if it's zero tolerance and no guns or any weapons are allowed in schools, then why are tasers? Why are there so-called school resource officers that basically go out and try and enforce the law and thinking that it's normal? Something's very decidedly fishy here. And besides, I can understand tasing when you're talking adults. But when you're talking kids, they're still growing up, and boy, that could absolutely wreck their growing cycle, whether it be psychologically, mentally, emotionally, or anything else. And to make matters worse, you're more likely to kill a youngster with a stun gun or a taser than you would with an adult. You hit them at the right rhythmic rate of their heart, and the heart could stop. It's happened. It really has happened in a lot of cases. And I'll be honest with you, if that happened to a kid, you can say goodbye to the whole school district. You're supposed to go to school to learn your ABCs and grow and develop as a human being, not to be worried about violence being put out by so-called resource officers. And I know a lot of them are around now because of the fact that there's so much school violence that has taken place over the last 15, 20 years. You can go back to Columbine, you can go back to other places. I mean, that is a bit understandable, but that's part of the byproduct that is our society today. Education has to come first and foremost. And even after you graduate, you're still going to be learning. Hey, even at 44 years of age, I'm still learning some things. But folks, why should kids have to be subject to tasers or stun guns for that matter? The incidents that I read on the Huffington Post on, I think it's what's called the stun gun or something like that, I read the thing and I was absolutely astonished. Kids from ages 12 through 19 in those 84 incidents happen to be victims of stun gun incidents at school. Please. That's just wrong. Violence serves no purpose anyway, and if that's what kids are going to learn when they're young, how do you think they're going to respect the cops? The cops might be worse depending on your location. It's too dangerous. There are other moral ways to break up a fight. And that's not one of them, to use a stun gun. Completely ridiculous, completely reprehensible, and completely unnecessary. Thankfully, from the 84 instances I read and locations as to where these things took place, thank goodness not one was let in New Jersey, which means our state for once is actually doing something right. But I did read a couple from Pennsylvania, but I saw some from Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Tennessee, Texas, California, Michigan, a bunch of other states that allow this. How can that be possible? Did some electrode ruin common sense in their brains? Or do these officials who hire these people or allow the administrations to permit these things, did they all have their consciences surgically removed and now they can pretty much run for Congress or anything like that who have the same mentality, which is probably none? It's absolutely insane. This cannot be tolerated. Folks, stun guns have no business being in schools. Violence serves no purpose anyway. After all, guns aren't allowed in schools, knives aren't allowed in schools, but you got resource officers that can use tasers or stun guns of people who are misbehaving that are minors, and it's acceptable? Are you telling me this is acceptable in 21st century education? Come on, guys. Use some frickin' common sense. It truly is a joke as to this taking place. Nobody should have to deal with that. I mean, God forbid, if my son got in trouble and kind of defied authority, he gets tased? Can you imagine that happening? I swear to God, I hope it doesn't. But it worries me that so many more districts are allowing this taser stun gun stuff to be put on students when it has no business being there at all, especially when there's zero tolerance on guns in school districts, pretty much all of them. I just don't get it. I really don't. And something has to be done. I would like to see more peaceful ways to resolve conflict. Fighting, it happens, but there are better ways to break up a fight. But you don't just pin somebody down, tell them to put their hands behind their back, and say that they're a criminal student and about to get tased. Like that instance I told you in North Carolina. How can that be acceptable? Look at all the violence that's taking place around us. Look at all the police officers that have been killed. Baton Rouge, Dallas, and now, of course, what happened in Orlando this year with 49 being killed. And I'm sure some were killed by the gunmen, others were killed in friendly fire by Orlando troopers. How can that be acceptable? I mean, think about it. How can such acts be acceptable in today's society when we only have each other? Bottom line, everything else is materialistic. We only have each other when it comes to humanity. There are better ways to solve things. Of course we're not going to agree with everything. I mean, trust me, I'm a Trump supporter. A lot of people don't like me for that. My family doesn't like me for that. That's okay. We are allowed to be different. But that doesn't mean we go fighting and punching each other over it. We accept our differences, we move on, and you know what? We can't change people. We can only change ourselves. But that doesn't mean you go fighting and then have law enforcement from a school come and pin you down and tase you. It doesn't work. That's not the way we should be living. There are peaceful alternatives and people need to use them. Give that some thought. My opinion, bottom line, get the stun guns, get the tasers out of school, and have some positive, reinforcing conflict resolution that can make things a whole lot better for kids, even when they do disagree. So on that note, there's lightning behind me, so I'm going to hit the road again. But of course, you can reach me at DJKRAYZTom at Comcast.net. Of course, on Facebook, it's at Facebook.com/CrazyTom, or my Twitter handle is at CrazyTomShow. Thanks for watching another YouTube video with your DJ Crazy Tom, signing off for now and heading back home. Thanks again, and hopefully not giving you a shocking rendition, okay, that's a bad joke, of Crazy Tom's What Drives Me Crazy.